So I figured out how to get maximum damage in Terraria using extra accessory slots and a ton of different accessories, armor, and different items. And the results were crazy. So this is actually finishing up the series, as I've done this with a couple other different things like speed, attack speed, and critical chance. And I know last week I said it was the finale because I didn't think I could get really high damage, but I proved myself wrong. Starting out with the Moonlord fight, I hadn't actually completely optimized my accessories yet, or armor, so later on we'll have some faster fights, but this ended with a 13-second fight. Towards the end of the videos, I'll have some super quick fights with true max damage. But for now, DPS got up to 600,000 damage per second, sometimes reaching up to 700,000. And in this part, we'll be fighting every boss in Terraria, almost leaving out some optional ones with max damage. So these first fights were really fast as I took out the bosses nearly instantly. Even Skeletron was almost instant. Then, and now hard mode with the mechs, I killed one of the twins before the other one even had time to spawn in. Plantera, most of the fight was waiting for it to come over to me so I could kill it. Golem, about the same, though it did take slightly longer. Duke Fisheron and Daytime Empress of Light were more of the same, but Duke Fisheron, while changing phases, it was invincible, so it survived a while. And Daytime Empress of Light, more of the same, despite being able to one-hit. Next, the Cultist, which did take a while waiting for the actual boss to spawn in, but then killed it pretty much instantly. The Pillars were pretty easy, plus at 30 times spawn rate, so I was able to defeat all the enemies to break the shield really quickly, and the Pillar went down nearly instantly. So, since the rest of the Pillars were pretty similar, I'll put them onto 2 times speed. Solar Pillar was the only one that was slightly harder, but not by much. Another thing is the armor I'm using to actually get max damage also has the max defense in the game. I'll get some better armor later on in the video using different boots to actually get higher damage. But then here's a Moonlord fight. This is not nearly as fast as some of them later on in the video, as I'll get pretty close to the world record. And next, what you guys have all been waiting for is trying to get as much damage as possible with the Copper Shortsword. I'll also do some crazy fights with the Copper Shortsword in a minute, which took a ton of time. So it actually did 600 damage per second, which is insane for the first weapon that you get in the game, unless you're doing Journey mode. So I decided to first fight Wall of Flesh with it, because why not? And then I'll fight the mechs with it, which did not go as expected. Moving into the Wall of Flesh fight, it was surprisingly a lot easier than I thought it would be. So part of the damage is also just from Solar Flare armor, because it does a ton of the damage. And then I also had the Bone Glove on to get slightly more damage, and I think a lot of it came from that. So I'll unequip the Bone Glove soon to do a true Copper Shortsword only run of the mech bosses. And overall, I'd say this fight probably took less time than the average Wall of Flesh fight when you're actually in pre-hard mode. And I was able to take it down without much trouble. Now for the mechs. This fight took 5.5 minutes, and I didn't even end up defeating all of them. So first off, I started by targeting Destroyers. I figured that would be the easiest boss to take down, as it didn't really move around too much, like the twins in Skeletron Prime. And this fight is on nearly 6 times speed, so it sped up a ton, and it surprisingly didn't take that long to take down the Destroyer, only taking a few minutes. But after that, I started ignoring my health bar, so it ended up taking a ton of damage from Skeletron Prime, mostly and partially twins. And then I took the Bone Glove off here as I realized most of my damage is coming from it. And that's when my damage really slowed down, usually getting no more than 200 damage per second, and that was if I was lucky. And it was about here in the footage where I started ignoring my health bar, not even healing, though I did not have the ability to heal for most of this because of potion sickness, and ignored my health bar and died. So I'll fight them individually. Starting off with the twins, I focused Spaz, it was probably easier, and when it charged me with the charge attack, it was taking damage from my Solar Flare armor, which I couldn't really prevent as I needed it for really high damage. And this fight ended up taking just as much time as the last one to die, with about 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Though the footage is sped up almost 6 times once again to try to get the footage down to a reasonable time. And about now, I finally defeated Spaz, and also realized, just for this video, I should probably turn on God mode, as I almost died there despite having really good armor, as almost all my accessories are catered towards damage and not towards defense. And for Brenna's, it actually got pretty difficult in the second phase just to chase it down, as the range of the copper short sword is really bad, and there aren't very many things I can do to make it bigger apart from legendary. So I was basically just chasing it down, and finally defeated it. Now for Skeletron Prime, I wanted this fight to take less than 3 years, so I decided to use a copper broadsword to get a little bit more damage and range, and turn back on God mode, as Skeletron Prime does even more damage than the last bosses. And this fight, I don't know if it was just because of solar flare armor, but only took 50 seconds, which really surprised me, as this is the hardest mech boss for sure, with the Destroyer being the easiest and the Twin sort of in the middle. And I didn't even target the arms to get the defense down towards the end of the fight, as I realized targeting Skeletron's head would be much better for this insane challenge. As well, I also had time paused at 7:30 PM, so I didn't run out of time, as that would have been really annoying for the fight. And here I just did a ton of damage, probably because of solar flare armor, but for the actual DPS test, I got up to 1300 damage per second with the copper broadsword. Next is the Vilethorn against Plantera. I was expecting this to be harder than the mechs with a copper short sword, but it ended up actually doing amazing damage and piercing through some enemies to get some of the arms in the second phase. And this fight ended up taking 1 minute and 50 seconds. The next part of the video will be speedrunning Moonlord fights as fast as possible, and I changed out some of my stuff. For the first 2 or 3 fights, it will be the current accessories that I'm using. Though for this fight right here against Plantera, I switched to mage armor instead of solar flare to get higher damage. But I'll switch my solar flare boots to the Valhalla Knight's Graves, which actually give a better melee damage, though less health, which definitely wasn't a problem as I had God mode on for the fights. Plus, I switched out from just sitting there and attacking it to the Shrimpy Truffle mount, which if you're on and it's raining or you're in any liquid, actually increases your damage, so that increased it even more. But back to the Plantera fight, after getting to second phase, it did pretty good being able to pierce the arms to actually hit the core for Plantera, and I was able to shred through it pretty quickly, considering this fight is using the Vilethorn, which is a pre-boss, pre-arm mode weapon that you can get right at the beginning of the game. So you know the times these fights are the frame where the health bar appears to disappears. Finishing the Plantera fight, we'll move into these Moonlord fights. Just so you know, this is not the world record. The actual record is literally 2 frames, so if you want to see that video, it's not by me, it'll be linked in the description. So now, this first fight does not have upgrade accessories or the Trippy Trouble, and took 7 seconds, which honestly seems really good, but compared to some of these next times, I didn't really like it. Next fight was my first with the upgraded gear and Shrimpy Truffle, which ended up giving me a time of 7 seconds flat, which is 1 frame faster than the last one. This next fight's awful. I let the head eye close, which meant I had to wait for it to open to be able to damage it, which ended in a 14-second fight. Now, the next one, another decent fight, which ended in 8 seconds. But after fully editing this video, not quite recording voiceovers yet, I was just playing around while recording trying to get faster times and got these 2 runs. So this first one was 6 seconds, which is insane for fighting Moonlord. But the next fight's even better. This was a couple fights later after a few decent and bad ones, and I got a 5 second with 44 frames, yes, frames out of 60 frames per second fight. Thanks for watching. If you have some other ideas on how to max out damage even more than this, comment it below. I have a new series coming out at 500 subscribers that you, the viewers, will be able to vote in, which is a March Madness style bracket with 32 weapons currently, but I want to get it down to 16 before I hit 500 subscribers. And you guys right now can go vote in my community post page on which weapon should make it into the final 16. And if you want a video going into more detail, click the link on the top left. The bottom left is maxing other stuff out like defense, attack speed, and movement speed. The bottom right are Terraria videos on underrated and overrated items. The top right's the subscribe button. Be sure to like and subscribe so I can hit 500 subscribers soon.